Now to the next phase in the impeachment showdown, with House Democrats set to present evidence in their case against the president at a judiciary hearing tomorrow morning. Evidence they say shows a rock-solid case, but Republicans aren't backing down. ABC's David Wright is at the White House.
On the eve of historic impeachment hearings, Congress has been burning the midnight oil.
We have to act now. You can't wait for the next election because he's trying to interfere with the next election.
The House Judiciary Committee is now charged with drafting specific grounds to remove President Trump.
As we move into the next stage of the impeachment drama, the House Democrats are gearing up to present their evidence against the president at a judiciary hearing tomorrow morning. They're claiming they have a solid case, but the Republicans aren't backing down. With the historic impeachment hearings just around the corner, it's clear Congress has been working hard, burning the midnight oil. There's a strong urgency here. Everyone's saying we can't just wait for the next election since the president seems to be trying to interfere with that process. The House Judiciary Committee has the responsibility to outline specific reasons for removing President Trump from office. This is undeniably an unprecedented moment. Congress has reached a realization that Trump may have gone too far. Serious discussions are happening about swiftly removing him from office, and this isn't coming from some fringe group or a social media movement. We're talking about 38 senators, elected officials wielding real influence, who have formally demanded Trump's immediate removal. It's honestly hard to believe they made such a bold move. This is significant, something you'd expect to read about in history books. We're witnessing a moment that could define an entire era and shape the future of our country. But let's take a quick pause here. We really can't put too much trust in mainstream media these days. That's why we created Pump Politics. We're all about bringing you genuine stories and real context without all the corporate spin. If you're interested in staying ahead of the news, you can sign up for our free newsletter, which delivers the headlines right to your inbox every day. Just check out the link in the description to join. And if you care about the truth and want to support what we're doing, come be part of our community. Now, back to the topic at hand. Those 38 senators represent over a third of the U.S. Senate. That's a significant block of power. They're saying it's time for the president to go, either through impeachment or by invoking the 25th Amendment. The pressure on President Trump is really ramping up. There's a serious buzz going around about Mr. Trump needing to step down after what unfolded at the Capitol on Wednesday. Even some of his biggest supporters in the media are on board with this. The editorial board of the Wall Street Journal has voiced that he should resign now, aiming to avoid another impeachment debacle. And honestly, it feels like that might be the path we're headed down. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer are both making it crystal clear. They want Trump to quit, or for Vice President Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment to get him out of there. They're not just whispering their thoughts or making phone calls behind closed doors. Nope. They're publicly stating their stance, signing official letters, and putting their names right on the line. They're putting their own political futures at risk, which really signals how serious the situation is. It shows that Congress is genuinely alarmed about Trump's actions. What's more alarming is that nearly 1 million people have signed a petition calling for his removal. Specifically, 973,000 signatures. That's practically 1 million Americans saying they've had enough of him as president. They want him gone. Those signatures made their way to Congress, marking a significant move in modern American politics. It clearly indicates a monumental shift in public sentiment. People are feeling worried and scared about where the country is headed. There's a real concern about whether democracy can withstand Trump's presidency. And here's the wild part. Congress is actually debating this matter. They're holding emergency sessions and discussions about whether or not to remove him from office. They're even drafting petitions and rallying support among members. It's a pretty unprecedented moment in our political landscape. Honestly, it feels like we're stepping into unprecedented territory here. Congress is seriously considering the possibility of removing Trump from office, and that's not just some philosophical debate happening on the sidelines. This is real and unfolding right before our eyes. Sure, we've seen impeachment before and faced political crises that made us hold our breath, but nothing quite like this. So, what triggered this urgency to demand his immediate removal? It's a perfect storm of issues. We're talking about the chaotic mass deportation policies causing turmoil all over the country, Trump openly defying federal court orders, and this overall attitude that he's somehow above the law. Congress has spotted a pattern of behavior they find dangerous and unconstitutional, but the real sticking point is his defiance of the courts. When Trump directed the federal government to ignore those court orders, it crossed a serious line, a constitutional violation that leaves no room for debate. This isn't just a minor disagreement. It goes right to the heart of the separation of powers. If a president can just brush off court rulings as if they don't exist, what does that mean for our constitutional government? We lose checks and balances, and what follows is a shift towards dictatorship. Congress is finally paying attention to this grim reality, realizing that it's time to take action. They're saying enough is enough, it's gone too far. If they don't step in, who knows what's next? The urgency to safeguard the Constitution and the democratic institutions we hold dear has never felt stronger. The need to protect our courts and the very foundations of our government is on everyone's mind now. We're at a pivotal moment where Congress really has to decide if they're going to stand up against presidential power or just let Trump run wild without facing any consequences. This period is truly a test of democracy and will be looked back on in history classes for ages. It didn't just happen out of the blue, though. This situation has been building for months, with a series of escalating crises and constitutional missteps. Trump has been pushing the limits of presidential authority over and over again, consistently breaking norms and ignoring courts, and finally Congress has said enough is enough. We should kick things off by talking about how he's been defying the courts, as that's the root of the issue. Trump instructed his administration to disregard federal court orders regarding immigration and deportations. This isn't something you can debate. It's a clear violation of the separation of powers. When it comes to interpreting laws and the Constitution, the courts have that authority and the president can't just shrug it off. He can't say, I don't like what the court said, so I'll do whatever I want. That's not how a constitutional system should operate. But for months, Trump has just gone ahead and defied court orders on immigration matters. He's been authorizing mass deportations despite what the courts have ruled. It's like he's acting as if the courts don't have any authority over his administration, and that's a real constitutional crisis. This is far from normal political squabbling or partisan issues. This is a serious threat to the whole system of checks and balances, a direct hit to the rule of law, and ultimately a threat to democracy itself. That's why we've got 38 senators publicly demanding his removal, why Congress is calling emergency sessions, and why close to 1 million people signed a petition. The government is really on shaky ground right now, facing potential constitutional chaos. A big part of this mess revolves around Trump's mass deportation policies, which aren't just your typical political hot potatoes. They're stirring up some serious questions about legality and constitutional rights. You can't help but wonder if these policies are actually in line with the Constitution and whether the federal government even has the power to carry out Trump's orders. When the federal court stepped in, asking Trump to take a breather and stick to the law, he pretty much shrugged it off. He made it clear he was going to do things his way, ignoring court orders left and right. That's when Congress finally decided they had had enough. They confidently declared, "You've crossed the line, you've violated the Constitution, you need to be out of here." It all kicked off back in late 2025 when 31 Democratic senators sent a letter saying Trump's actions were so over the top and risky that they called for either impeachment or invoking the 25th Amendment. Now, fast forward, and you have 38 senators on board. That's a significant jump, showing that even some moderates, those who aren't always in the thick of partisanship, are starting to think this is serious business. This shift in numbers is crucial. It signals we're getting closer to some bipartisan backing for removal, making the chances of actually booting Trump from office more realistic. Here's the kicker when it comes to removal. If you're aiming for impeachment, you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate to convict, which means 67 votes. And right now it feels like we're nowhere near that number. Definitely not even close. But the 25th Amendment presents a whole different route for removal. This one comes into play when the vice president and a majority of the cabinet agree that the president isn't fit for office. The cool part? They don't need the Senate's thumbs up to invoke it. They can just do it and get the ball rolling. It's interesting to think about how the 25th Amendment works, especially when it comes to removing a president. Congress can actually override a president's objections if they get a 2/3 vote in both chambers. So, if they're starting to seriously organize around that amendment, Donald Trump could find himself out of a job without needing a lot of Republican support. What's got Trump rattled is that it could be his own cabinet and vice president leading the charge for his removal. That's the source of all the panic from the White House. They're calling this a political witch hunt, desperately trying to paint it as a partisan attack. But they know the numbers, and if it comes down to the cabinet and vice president declaring Trump unfit, Congress could go ahead and remove him. They're acutely aware that they won't win the vote to keep him in office if it evolves into a serious constitutional challenge. So, what does Trump do? He starts fighting back, attacking the courts, pushing against them even more. He's trying to project strength in hopes that members of his cabinet won't jump ship. Ironically, the more he acts like he's above the law, the more he hands evidence to justify his removal. Then there's the truly remarkable part, a petition with 1 million signatures. That's a big deal. Typically, petitions don't make waves in Congress, but 1 million? That's a statement. It shows that people are really paying attention, that they're scared, and frankly, they just want Trump out of there. This isn't just a bunch of signatures, it's a powerful political message that Congress can't afford to ignore. When those signatures are delivered to Congress, it creates a significant moment, a chance for lawmakers to confront the fears of the American people. The public is clearly calling for change, and they believe Trump should be removed. Plus, the timing of this entire effort overlaps with other huge issues like the Epstein scandal and the Bondi cover-up, along with ongoing debates about war powers. It's a wild time, for sure. Things are really heating up politically right now, with a lot going on all at once. We're seeing this perfect storm of crises, like the tension surrounding Iran, the 42 American lives lost, and the Speaker of the House taking aggressive shots at reporters. It feels like Congress is being pulled in every direction with pressure coming from everywhere, like the courts ruling against Trump, military worries over the situation in Iran, and even Epstein victims standing up to confront Bondi in Congress. With everything in crisis mode, Congress is finally realizing that they need to step up and do something bold. It's almost like they're saying, we've got to act now and remove the heart of the problem, which is Trump himself. As we look ahead, the next few weeks could really shape the future of this country and determine if our Constitution holds up. Now, whether this effort to remove Trump is actually going to go anywhere is a big question. I mean, with 38 senators publicly calling for his removal, emergency debates happening, and nearly 1 million people signing petitions, we might be at a tipping point where this could actually turn into something real. If it happens, Trump's entire presidency might just collapse and everything would come to a standstill. Congress would be consumed by the discussions around removal, halting all other legislation and leaving the government in a state of total paralysis. And honestly, that's a scenario we have to consider because Congress won't be able to function properly while they're focused on trying to remove Trump. With midterm elections coming up, Republicans are understandably worried about being on the wrong side of this debate. If they vote against removal and Trump acts out again in a dangerous way, they're going to face backlash, including primary and general election challenges. They could end up being tied to whatever mess Trump creates next. As we head into the midterms, things are getting really interesting. Some Republicans might seriously consider jumping ship or even get on board with the effort to remove Trump just to save their political skin. If a bunch of them decide to cross over, it could shift the balance and make removal a genuine possibility. Now, watching the White House's response is quite telling. They're labeling this whole situation a partisan witch hunt, accusing Democrats of trying to kick Trump out for political reasons. But honestly, you can sense the panic there. If this wasn't a real threat, Trump wouldn't be acting so defensive. He wouldn't be constantly going after the courts or defying them outright. If he believed the legal process would just work out, he'd let it happen and trust in the Constitution. But instead, he's fighting back, resisting, and lashing out, which shows he knows the stakes are high and that removal is a real possibility. On top of that, the economic situation adds more pressure on Congress. They've got to tackle issues like inflation and unemployment, all the daily struggles that Americans are facing. But if they're bogged down in debates over Trump's removal, then that means they can't focus on the economy or pass any helpful legislation. The longer they get stuck in this paralysis, the worse the economy becomes. I mean, gas prices are still hovering around $6.20 a gallon, and people are really struggling to afford food. So, Congress is kind of at a crossroads here. They can either remove Trump and face the chaos that comes with a constitutional crisis, or they can leave him where he is and deal with this economy on the brink of collapse. Either way, the next few months promise to be nothing short of chaotic and unprecedented. And we can't overlook the links to the Epstein scandal because everything happening together, the scandals, the war powers situation with Iran, the defiance of mass deportation orders, the press being attacked, and now these calls for removal, it's creating this overwhelming feeling that Trump's presidency is spiraling out of control. It's hard not to feel like he's become a direct threat to the country. It's interesting to see how the pressure is really mounting for Congress to take some action on removal. The scandals are piling up so quickly that Congress is struggling to keep up, and we're reaching a point where something has to give. If we're looking at the 25th Amendment, it actually has a better chance of going through than impeachment, which requires a two-thirds vote in the Senate to convict. Good luck getting that many senators to agree on anything. But with the 25th Amendment, all it takes is the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to decide that Trump isn't fit for the job. Congress just needs a two-thirds vote to override any objections from Trump, so it's a bit easier to navigate. Now, if Congress starts putting some real pressure on the vice president and the cabinet to invoke that amendment, we could see some serious movement. They might just conclude that Trump truly isn't fit for office, which could lead to Congress voting for his removal. This puts the Republican Party in a tough spot. If the vice president and the cabinet move forward with the 25th Amendment, it's essentially a Republican statement saying that Trump is unfit. This isn't just a Democratic thing, it's a major statement from within the government itself. On top of everything, we've got the midterms coming up, and Republicans are pretty nervous. They know if they're tied too closely to Trump when Congress eventually votes on his removal, they're setting themselves up to get wiped out in the elections. They could lose control of the House of Representatives and the Senate, leaving them as a minority party. So it makes a lot of sense for Republicans to consider distancing themselves from Trump, and as more of them jump ship, the push for removal picks up steam. The American public seems to be rallying behind this idea, which only adds more fuel to the fire. Things are really heating up, and we're at a crucial point in our political landscape. With nearly 1 million signatures on a petition calling for Trump's removal, it's clear that a lot of people in America are seriously concerned. They feel like Trump could be a danger to the country, and Congress really has to take that into account. It's not just a number, it's a strong message from the public that they want action. If Congress ignores this, they might as well stop pretending they represent the people's voice. Talking about the current situation, 38 senators are pushing hard for Trump's removal, and Congress is even holding emergency debates. Meanwhile, the White House is definitely feeling the pressure, and Republicans are faced with a tough decision: either back the removal or stick with Trump as the midterms approach. The potential for invoking the 25th Amendment is becoming a serious consideration, and honestly, you can feel the tension in the air as Trump's presidency hangs in the balance. The next few weeks and months will be vital in deciding whether he's ousted or manages to weather this storm. It's a defining moment for our democracy, testing whether our institutions can rein in Trump and uphold democratic values. Democracy really is at stake, and the outcomes in the coming months will shape the future of this country. So I'll be keeping a close eye on how this plays out, because it's shaping up to be the biggest political story of the year, and it's only going to get more intense from here.